Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Liz Hanks. I'm the Texas chapter lead for Moms Demand Action. We are a nonpartisan grassroots organization of people fighting for gun safety and common sense gun laws around the country. The other day, I was talking to a neighbor. He's very well informed and politically inclined, and he didn't realize that Texas does not have a red flag law. In the wake of this horrific shooting at Lakewood Church in our town, we want to bring the people who care about this issue together, including all of the people on the stage today, to raise awareness about the lack of a red flag law in the state of Texas. When a person is in crisis and considering harming themselves or others, family members and law enforcement are often the first people to see those warning signs. Extreme risk laws, sometimes referred to as red flag laws, allow loved ones or law enforcement to intervene by petitioning a court for an order to temporarily prevent someone in crisis from accessing guns. Not only do we not have one in Texas, but Moms Demand Action has fought for one every legislative session for quite some time. A red flag law has been drafted and proposed every session for the last several sessions, but never even gets a hearing. Unfortunately, our legislators, the majority of our legislators, are not listening to what Texans want. The only way we'll ever get these life-saving laws is for people to vote for gun sense candidates, like the ones on this stage today, who understand that more guns do not make us more safe, and that regulations that work for other states will work for Texas if we have the courage to implement them. Today is the start of early voting in Harris County. I encourage everyone watching this to vote early and educate themselves about who are the candidates on your ballot who care about common sense gun laws. We also want to thank Reverend Colin Bossen for allowing us to have this press conference here in this beautiful church. And I'd like to invite him up now to speak about how this incident has affected his church community. And after that, my council member, Abbie Kamin, will speak.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Colin Bossen, Senior Minister of this church, the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, and I'm delighted to welcome Moms Demand Action here. Even though this is a difficult day, it is wonderful to see them and to continue our partnership with them around advocacy for common sense gun reform. I want to start out simply by calling out on other religious leaders to be engaged in this issue. It is really unfortunate that far too many religious leaders are silent in calling for common sense gun legislation. And I was just reflecting on the red flag law and how it relates to the care that we have for our congregants. Just yesterday evening, I actually had to have a conversation with somebody who was experiencing suicidal ideation around whether they had a gun at home. And whether that was something that, we needed to be concerned about in terms of any action that they might take. And I think it's really important to understand that if there were things like red flag laws, conversations like that would be less common and less of something that we as clergy and religious leaders needed to worry about. So I think that it's really something that the religious community needs to speak out more for. In our congregation, we've been trying to do that. In the wake of Uvalde, we took out a full-page ad in the Houston Chronicle calling for Houston to reconsider its invitation to have the NRA meet here. It did not seem like it was an appropriate thing for that organization to be having a large conference in Texas so soon after that horrible event. We've had 2 services here specifically for survivors, which we've collaborated on with moms and have been, I think, very moving and meaningful for people in understanding the human impact of the lack of common sense gun reform laws. Unfortunately, at this church, we've also in the last couple of years had to hire security, armed security, on Sunday mornings to keep our congregants safe. Texas, as many of you know, is one of the centers for hate crimes in the United States, one of the leaders for hate crimes. Last summer, 2 Unitarian Universalist congregations experienced instances around hate crimes or gun incursions. And so we felt that after that, we needed to start to have armed security, especially because we also house a synagogue here, and the Jewish community has experienced a great deal of hate crimes with anti-Semitism. So those are reasons why we've had security, and it's really, I think, unfortunate and unnecessary, or shouldn't be necessary for people to gather together freely to worship however they understand the most holy, to have an armed presence on Sunday mornings or Saturdays to keep them safe. And I think that having common sense gun legislation, including red flag laws, would make it so that we wouldn't need to take such measures, which are just not the sort of environment that I want to create on Sunday morning. I don't want somebody to see an armed police officer here on Sunday morning the first time they walk through our doors. I don't want to have to lock our doors all the time. I don't want to have to consider taking additional security measures beyond that. So thank you very much to moms and for all of our elected officials who are here and showing leadership on this issue. I hope that you will soon be joined by other elected officials speaking out.
Good morning. I'm Council Member Abbie Kamin, and I represent the area in part that covers Lakewood Church. And first, I want to thank the Reverend for having us today, and for houses of worship in general that are stepping up and speaking out. And I also want to recognize Moms Demand Action. I picked up the phone and called Liz, and I said, what's the plan? And of course, without fail, every time Moms has a plan. So thank you all for your leadership. I am also grateful, and we've heard this said several times already, that we're grateful for the swift response of first responders and law enforcement last weekend. To the security guards inside, to those who arrived within minutes, we thank them. This is what in the city of Houston we prepare for, but this is not something we should have to prepare for. That's the point. Members of a congregation, again, we're in a church today. Members of law enforcement as well should never be put in that situation to begin with. So again, I say this should have never happened, and it shouldn't have happened at Lakewood. It shouldn't have happened at First Baptist in Sutherland Springs. It shouldn't have happened in West Freeway Church of Christ. It should not happen in any house of worship, grocery store, school, mall, hospital, movie theater, Super Bowl parade. Even for those whose lives are spared, and I believe we will soon be also hearing from gun violence survivors, the trauma of this public health crisis impacts thousands upon thousands of Americans, including children, every single year. So when it comes to gun violence, when is it going to be enough? In Texas, we have some of the most lax firearm safety laws, and our governor touts that as something to be proud of. But he doesn't mention that those lax laws are matched by the unparalleled numbers of firearm injury victims and survivors. As the investigation related to Lakewood continues, hard questions need to be asked, including why in our state is it okay for an individual with this long of a background and known warning signs, why was she able to legally obtain a firearm when she clearly posed such a risk to herself and those around her, including her 7-year-old son who is fighting for his life right now? And I want to be very clear that when we discuss mental illness, most people with mental illness and mental health conditions will never become violent. So let's be responsible with how we're using language so that we are not creating and generating a stigma, because it is not mental illness that causes most gun violence. If we are going to talk about mental illness, let's talk about the state's lack of funding for mental health. And let's make sure that the state puts their money where their mouth is. And I am calling on Governor Abbott yet again for that. The same goes with Child Protective Services. The state of Texas has been held in contempt multiple times by a federal judge for the blatant disregard and abuses and failures of the system. Again, if we're going to talk about that, let's talk about what the state is doing and what they're not doing. But we've said it before, and today we are here because we must pass common sense safety measures, including red flag laws. And you heard Liz talk about that. You will hear from my colleagues, and I'm going to introduce them in a second, what elected officials are trying to do at every level of government, whether it's here at the city or at our state level with State Representative Ann Johnson and Ron Reynolds leading the way, our county attorney, Christian Menifee. I also want to recognize in the audience today, we have Ann Sung here on behalf of Commissioner Leslie Briones. Her area also encompasses Lakewood Church, and she is an ally in this fight. So again, I'll close. I'm going to be bringing up each individual elected official so you can hear directly from those that are speaking out, that are standing up. But I'm going to ask that our media partners that are here today to please, as you're covering this and as you're covering gun violence generally, to include scrolling resources that include Harris Center's 24/7 crisis line, which is 713-970-7000, or the National Crisis Hotline, 988. And for those here today, we have an audience packed with dedicated volunteers, our Moms Demand Action volunteers and our Everytown volunteers. If you are interested in joining Moms Demand, it is a worthy cause and we need your voice. Please text READY, again, text the word READY to 64433. Again, 64433, and we appreciate our media partners because we cannot get these messages out without you. With that, at this time, I'm going to invite up my friend who has been championing these laws at the state level, State Representative Johnson.
Thank you. Actually, just quick change of plans. I see my Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has just walked in. If you would like to come up now, we'd love to have you speak. Okay, please, that would be great. Okay, Representative Johnson then, thank you.
My name's Ann Johnson. I'm proud to represent this area in House District 134. Lakewood Church is part of our community and part of our district, but I am tired of doing this. I am tired of incident after incident coming back and saying in response to the same politicians that will offer after the fact thoughts and prayers to say that is not enough. I am proud to have been in the 88th legislative session, and I am proud to have offered House Bill 3057, but we are tired of knowing what to do to prevent the crisis and not just show up at press conferences after the fact. And so this bill could have prevented the Lakewood Church incident. It could have provided the relief to the family and friends and the neighbors that were saying repeatedly over and over again, this woman is in a serious mental health crisis and a danger seriously to herself and others. And if you add a firearm to that mix, it is a deadly combination. This bill would have allowed somebody to make that complaint to a judge. This bill would have allowed notice and due process. This bill would have allowed that judge to hold a hearing. This bill would have allowed for intervention in mental health treatment for that individual in a crisis. And this bill could have allowed law enforcement to do their job and disarm an individual who was dangerous to all of us. I am tired of fearing the inaction of not getting this type of bill passed in our grocery stores, our malls, our movies, our churches, our celebratory parades, because politicians have made a career out of telling us that thoughts and prayers is all we can do. What a fraud. What a fraud to perpetrate on all of us, to have us believe that constitutionally a person in a dangerous mental health crisis is more entitled to have a gun than we are entitled to pass legislation to keep everyday Texans safe. And so my commitment to you is I will go back to Austin. I will again file this bill. And I'm asking that every citizen demand the action that, you know what? This didn't even get a hearing. We weren't even allowed to talk about the common sense gun safety provisions that everyday Texans want. And I'm tired, just like you. For all these moms with their shirts, they know the violence. They know the torment. They know the pain. And they are doing everything desperately because they know it's not a question of if it will come to you and your community and your family, but right now it's a question of when. And that's because of the inaction. And that's why it's time for all of us as politicians to act. And my promise is to stand with you and to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Next, we're going to hear from County Attorney Christian Menefee.
Good morning. I'm Christian Menefee, the Harris County Attorney, and although I'm glad to be here today with freedom fighters from across Harris County who are advocating for sensible gun policy, I hate that something had to bring us here together today. I'm reminded of some of the initial words that you saw officials saying after this incident, and it could have been worse. And then we saw Joel Osteen, the pastor of Lakewood, stand up and say, although it could have been worse, we're traumatized. And it just kept ringing in my head over and over and over again. This is not normal. It's not normal for there to be a shooting in a church and for officers to have to take somebody's life because they were in there with a firearm that could have killed multiple people. It's not normal that a kid would find themselves fighting for their life in a hospital because we can't pass sensible gun laws. It's not normal that a group of people would believe that the U.S. Constitution gives them the right to have any type of gun in any place in any incident. I sit back and think about how for the vast majority of our country's history, nobody even believed that the Second Amendment guaranteed individuals the right to bear arms. This is a recent thing that really started in the 70s and the 80s where the NRA tried to radicalize us, but they were really effective in radicalizing our politicians. You see, normal Texans, more than 70% of them believe in sensible gun laws like red flag policies. It's our politicians in Austin who don't. Normal people throughout Harris County know that it's not right for them to have to live in fear when they go to the hospital, when they go to the grocery store, when they go to their church of a shooting, but it's the politicians in Austin who refuse to act. So what I'm calling on is for the politicians in Austin to stop letting the gun lobby and the NRA weaponize the Second Amendment. What I'm calling on is for the governor of the state of Texas, the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas, to stop pushing radical ideology, to stop weaponizing the Second Amendment. I'm calling on our politicians in Austin, mainly folks from the Republican Party, to please, for the love of God, abandon your absurdity. Abandon your absurdity. We have smart people in our communities. We have smart people in our churches. We have smart people who attend Lakewood. We have smart people who are pastors there. Why the hell don't we have smart people in Austin? Many times when I'm dealing with issues at the county on environmental policy, people will come in and say, oh, you just want to have industry go away and you just want environmental justice running all throughout our state. I said, no, I just want moderation. What Texans are calling on for our gun policy is moderation. You shouldn't be fighting harder for what you call constitutional carry than you are for laws that protect people in church. I don't care if you're Republican, Democratic, Independent. We should be doing everything we can to protect people. And so if you're tough on crime, if you want higher police budgets, right? If you want to be tough on crime, you should be tough on gun policy. And we shouldn't allow the gun lobby to come into our communities and try to convince us of things that we know not to be true. So to the politicians in Austin, to our governor, to our lieutenant governor, to the folks in the majority in the state Senate in the state house. Abandon your absurdity. We need reasonable gun laws, and we need them right the hell now. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Representative Ron Reynolds, who's also been a staunch ally in this fight.
Well, good morning. My heart is heavy again because I've been here in this church with Moms Demand Action before, where we were mourning many of the victims of gun violence. And here we are again today. And I don't want to be redundant, and I'm going to echo everything that was already stated by my colleague, Representative Ann Johnson, by County Attorney Christian Menifee. And with one correction, Mr. County Attorney, there are some of us who believe in common sense gun reform legislation and have been fighting for it. And it is unfortunate that the majority of the state of Texas, their calls for common sense gun reform is falling on deaf ears. Not by all the members, because Representative Johnson is right. We have filed legislation after Uvalde that we believed if no other time in our state's history would finally get the attention of Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and some of our colleagues, because this should be a bipartisan issue, right? Common sense gun reform legislation. And we were optimistic. We did it in good faith. We worked, and many of you came to Austin and you appealed to us. One of the most troubling things for me as a legislator, as a parent of elementary age kids, was to sit in front of some of the parents from Uvalde and hear their experience after the death of their children. And I thought, surely, as I'm wiping tears away from my eyes, that they're going to encourage my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to do something, right? And we did nothing. And here we are again after another senseless incident that happened at Lakewood that we can't be numb to. We can't desensitize ourselves as another headline and then we move on to the next. We have to stop moving to the next headline and say, Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, all of our colleagues, when are we going to say enough is enough? Enough is enough. When are we going to start prioritizing people over politics? Because that's what it is. There are too many politicians and not enough public servants that are willing to put the best interests of our citizens of this state before the interests of the NRA and their profits. That's all it is. It's profits. It's not people. Until it hits them, I don't know when they're going to do it because they're beholden to a scorecard. And that it breaks my heart that we can't get red flag laws. Because, Ann, unlike you, I had a hearing. And I had District Attorney Brian Middleton, Leslie, we had law enforcement testify in a hearing on a bill that I filed for a red flag law. And it was opposed by the NRA and the Texas Rifle Association. And guess what? They didn't even vote it. They weren't even going to touch it. It was like a favor to me that I had a hearing, as sad as that is. There was a meaningless hearing on raising the age. There was never any intent on that. There was no hearing on closing the gun show loopholes. So we offered many solutions to address the gun epidemic in this state, and they all fell on deaf ears. And so I'm a proud Christian, and as I close, but my faith teaches me that faith without works is dead. So enough for your hopes and prayers, because that's their solution. It's hopes and prayers. Really, literally. There's no legislative solution. It is hopes and prayers. And then at the next one, the same thing over and over again. And so elections have consequences. The only way that we're going to change this narrative of hopes and prayers to policy and red flag laws and raising the age and closing the gun show loophole, common sense gun reform legislation that Moms Demand Action has been the champion of, is to fire many of the people who hold public trust, that are failing the public, that are failing those innocent children, that are failing people from being safe in churches and malls and shopping centers and schools and places of worship and movie theaters and everywhere else. It is time that we get serious about primaries and general elections and elect people who care about people and not the NRA. So thank you again, Moms Demand Action. Thank you for always standing up for people who don't have a voice. Thank you for standing up for victims so that they know that their loved one's life really mattered. And to hold elected officials like me and Ann and Christian and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who's been another champion at the federal level, to continue to hold us accountable and making sure that we get rid of those MAGA extremists that put politics before people. Thank you.
From the elected side, I'm about to bring up someone that you all know, and I wanted to first also say that Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, who also represents Lakewood Church, could not be here, but remains a staunch ally in working with all of us. But it is my privilege to recognize my Congresswoman, someone who always shows up, Sheila Jackson Lee, to share a few words with us as this work continues at the city, the county, at the state level. The most critical work, I would say, has to come from the federal government. And Congresswoman, we are so grateful that you are here with us today to share your words.
Councilmember, thank you so very much, and to the sensible people who are gathered here, from the county attorney to the state reps who are here, to our council member, to our advocates, to every town, to Moms Demand Action, to the sensible people, the people that love life and love people. I start my commentary with the words of my late and favorite social justice colleague, John Lewis: never give up, never give in, and never give out. So Moms Demand Action, my charge and challenge to you: never give up, never give out, never give in. We're going to win this war. This is a war. I'm determined to make sure that the babies yet unborn do not have to face the violence of guns, rather than pencils and crayons and coloring books, rather than Sunday school with music and play. They have to face guns and violence. America, stand up. Where are we in this country? Are we not a country that believes in the Declaration of Independence? We all are created equal, with certain inalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And if we are traced and run after with people with guns, then our liberties are taken away from us. How dare the NRA, how dare the gun lobby think that their rights are more than ours to live, to be able to thrive, and to be able to worship. Let me first of all thank the first responders who were stupendous a week ago at the tragedy of Lakewood, where the family members, the Lakewood family members, Osteen families were scattered throughout the building because they had just finished at first service. And they typically go and greet members and scatter in different parts of the building, and were only stunned by someone running to them and said something was happening as their beloved Hispanic service was beginning. A truly disturbed human being with a long record of disturbance, evidenced by her family trying time after time to find a way to bring relief, and having no basis to be able to seek relief for her. Her episodes, her actions were crying out for relief. And it was just two officers of the law that stood their ground, that were able to keep an AR-15 in the hands of someone so very, very sick from penetrating that church sanctuary and God knows what would have happened. We worshiped this past week, this past Sunday, 2 days ago, with the Lakewood family. We saw the evidence of the pain, but yes, the joy of celebration that so many lives were saved. Is this the plight of America? That we spend our time celebrating, oh, thank God it wasn't more that died? That there were not more dead? Is the plight of America that sees synagogues in Pennsylvania, churches in Texas, schools like Oxford, Parkland's commemoration just a week ago of 6 years, Texas Tech, Columbine, and the list goes on and on? Is this our destiny? Can we not do the right thing? And so I say to Moms Demand Action, every town, the Brady organization, and on and on and on, continue the fight. Yes, I hold up the shame, but yes, minimal celebration, the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. We were excited that we were able to pass some form of gun laws in the federal level. But guess what? They pushed back on the extreme risk. Can you believe it? We in the House, under my committee, under my subcommittee, passed the red flag laws. We sent it to the Senate, but it got strangled, terminated, knocked down, and the word was we couldn't get it passed. We couldn't get the Republicans in that would push it down. We could get this bill, but we couldn't get the extreme risks. We couldn't get any gun storage laws. Simple procedures to save lives. We get simple modification Medicaid and some exposure to mental health services, and I don't diminish that. But we could not get the extreme risk. There are 21 states that has it. Texas is still standing in the block. And so we go back again to reintroduce the red flag laws. But I think you should take the ludicrousness of passing a bill and them snatching out of the House bill that was sent to the Senate, the red flag law. They took it out. I want the truth to be told. We passed that. And yet, the Senate architects said, I'd rather throw it out because we won't be able to get the minimal access through Medicaid, mental health services. Those are all well and good. But in Oxford, the young man, as a testimony to the mother's trial, it was shown he was begging for help. He was saying, I need help. He was sending texts. He didn't get help. Red flag law could have been helpful for his school to be able to help a young man who was begging for help. Santa Fe, begging for help. Parkland, and all of the tragic circumstances. The confused gentleman who went to the synagogue in Pennsylvania, attacking the synagogue for their affection and love and humanitarian help for immigrants. He was begging for help. So I am asking you to take up the banner now and realize what happened at Lakewood right in our very backyard and in our front yard. And this extreme risk laws, they are a proven way to intervene before an incident of gun violence, such as a firearm suicide or mass shooting, occurs and takes more lives. States around the country are increasingly turning to extreme risk laws as a common sense way to help reduce gun violence. When a person is in crisis and considering harming themselves or others, they often exhibit clear warning signs. Family members and law enforcement are usually the first people to see these signs, but in too many cases, they have few tools to take preventative action despite picking up on the signs. Who other than their loved ones, their teachers, their neighbors? In the instance of the tragedy of the woman who went into Lakewood, her families told everyone. They didn't want to be seen in the press, but they said, we've been telling everyone. The neighbors were telling everyone. They were telling law enforcement. They had no tools. It breaks my heart. The extreme risk laws empower loved ones or law enforcement to intervene and temporarily prevent someone in crisis from accessing firearms. That's all we needed to do. And now a little boy lies fighting for his life. Do you think he knew where he was going? Do you think he knew what he was doing? Do you think he just was with mommy? What we all do with little ones, hold their precious hands. They're so eager to put their hand in yours and to walk with you because you are the comforting one. You're the big person that takes their hand. And there's obviously nothing that you're going to do but make sure they are safe. And so she had his hand as they got out of the car and walked into a place of worship. Little hand, safe, without danger. And we let him down. And now he lays fighting for his life. And so my words are in this moment of crisis. Let us be tough against those who are tough with us. Let us tell the naysayers and the detractors that we're not going to bend our knee to you. You're wrong. You're about money. You misinterpret the Second Amendment. It is to form a militia. There are no words that indicate that regular, sensible gun regulation is disallowed. Universal background check, red flag laws. None of that is precisely excluded out of the Second Amendment. And so these laws, sometimes referred to as red flag laws, can help de-escalate emergency situations. And extreme risk laws give key community members a way to intervene before these warning signs escalate into tragedies without going through the criminal court system. One less good luck or God's blessing on Sunday last could have resulted in mass murder. But because of God's blessings, 2 officers who stood their ground, tragically, a life was lost, and a little boy lies fighting for his life. It is my view that the fight we have is a fight I'm never going to give up. My emotions will not take over my fierceness of strength to introduce the bill over and over again and to stare down those who have no good common sense that they would choose to be able to stand up an organization over standing up lives. As I said, I believe that the Constitution is right. This nation organized to create a more perfect union. And the Declaration of Independence said that we had liberties that we should cherish. They are precious. And one of those liberties is to live our fullest life. And for the little ones, for worshipers, for school children, for shoppers, for every aspect of life, you deserve the right to live. And this is what our day is today. A pledge, a commitment that we're going to live. And the red flag laws can be instrumental in that fight. Moms demand action. Rise up and never sit down. Rise up and never sit down.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We have one more speaker to round out this amazing powerhouse of speakers that were here today. And I just want you to try to focus for the next few minutes because you're going to hear from our survivor lead, our state survivor lead, LaJoy Curry, who is a survivor of gun violence. And that's who we need to be listening to always, centering those voices, people who understand what this horrible gun violence epidemic does to lives. And for the folks at Lakewood Church, especially those who were there when the shooting happened, they are now survivors of gun violence. And if they are struggling, we have resources that we'd love to share with them, but they should know that how they're feeling is valid. And LaJoy, would you please come up and share more with us?
Hello. My name is LaJoy Curry. I'm a wounded survivor of gun violence. I was shot at a school event when I was 16 years old. I serve as the survivor membership lead for the state of Texas. And I joined Moms Demand Action because I refuse to let my experience go unnoticed. I know the wounds, I feel the wounds, I have the scars, but the work that I do with Mom amplifies that we will not go unnoticed. My wounds serve as a reminder of the devastating impact of gun violence on innocent people. I was an innocent bystander of a drive-by shooting. Gun violence is preventable. There is hope. In addition to mental health support, removing access to a gun in a moment of crisis may be the difference between life and death. In many instances of gun violence, there are clear warning signs that the shooter poses a serious threat before the shooting. Extreme risk laws give key community members a way to intervene before warning signs become tragedies. Lives would be saved if Texas enacted an extreme risk protection order. I'm committed to being a voice of change, advocating for sensible gun laws and supporting initiatives to prevent future tragedies. I hope Texas legislators will join me to save lives. And as a Christian, I felt the pain of Lakewood Church. Being afraid to go to the place where you should be able to find relief is a tragedy. We gather to worship to get peace, but when you are operating in fear of being shot, that peace is diminished. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you for continuing to help us on this journey, this fight, this war that we continue to fight on a daily basis. Thank you.
Okay, that's our program. Those are our speakers. Thank you so much for coming. I just want you to feel like there is hope. The folks on this stage are our hope. Vote for people like the folks on this stage who care about common sense gun policy, and we can keep going in Texas, even in Texas, you guys.